The story of how a lodger stole her husband from the family. When my husband and I got married, we made a decision that seemed sensible at the time. We wouldn't sell his apartment. It was a small, cozy place he had bought before we met, and although it wasn't the most luxurious of properties, it held a special place in his heart. Instead of selling, we decided to rent it out. The extra income was a welcome addition to our family budget, and for a while everything was going smoothly. For over 4 years, we had a string of tenants who were mostly uneventful, people who paid their rent on time and left the place in good condition. There were the occasional repairs, but nothing out of the ordinary. That is, until Nadezhda S. came along. From the moment I met her, I felt a pang of unease. She was younger than me by several years, and I couldn't help but notice that she was quite attractive. Long, flowing hair, bright eyes, and a figure that seemed tailor-made for turning heads. She had it all. But it wasn't just her looks that bothered me, it was the way she carried herself. There was an air of confidence about her that made me feel instantly inferior, as though she knew she could have anything she wanted, and right now, what she wanted was my husband's attention. When we showed her the apartment, she had this smug look on her face that I couldn't shake. I brushed it off at first, thinking I was just being paranoid. But then she started nitpicking, complaining about the apartment's condition. She wasn't rude about it, but she made it clear that she expected things to be in top shape. The faucet in the kitchen leaked, she said, and the water pressure in the shower was weak. The toilet wasn't flushing properly, and the paint on the walls was chipping. "It's an old apartment," I explained with a forced smile. "We've done what we can to keep it in good condition, but we can't do major renovations right now." She nodded, pretending to understand, but I could see that she wasn't satisfied. Still, she signed the lease and moved in a few days later. I hoped that would be the end of it, but I was wrong. From the moment she moved in, it seemed like something was always going wrong in the apartment. The faucet in the kitchen leaked again, then the bathroom sink followed suit. The toilet stopped holding water, and the showerhead was barely trickling. It was as though the entire plumbing system decided to revolt the moment Nadezhda crossed the threshold. Of course, my husband took it upon himself to handle the repairs. At first, I didn't mind. He was good with his hands and liked fixing things, so it seemed natural for him to take care of it. But soon, I started noticing a pattern. He was at her apartment more and more often, sometimes every other day, fixing something that had supposedly broken, and each time he came back looking a little too pleased with himself. One evening, after another supposed repair session, he returned home with his hair wet and smelling of soap. The scent was unmistakable, a fresh, clean fragrance that didn't belong to him. "Why did you take a shower at Nadezhda's place?" I asked, trying to keep the suspicion out of my voice. He hesitated for a moment, then stammered out an excuse that made no sense. "I got doused with wastewater from the siphon," he said, avoiding my gaze. I looked him up and down. His clothes were clean, not a speck of dirt or water on them, but his hair was freshly washed, and he smelled like he'd just stepped out of a shower. "So your clothes stayed clean, but you got soaked?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. He mumbled something incoherent and brushed past me, heading straight for the bedroom. My heart sank. Something was definitely wrong, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Maybe I was overreacting. Maybe it was just my insecurities playing tricks on me. But the unease wouldn't go away. In fact, it grew worse. He started staying late at work more often, and when I asked about it, his answers were vague. I wanted to trust him, I really did, but the little things started adding up, and soon I couldn't ignore the nagging doubt that had taken root in my mind. Then, one night, everything came crashing down. It was a chilly evening when he finally dropped the bombshell. We were sitting in the living room, the silence between us heavy and uncomfortable. I could sense that something was on his mind, but I didn't expect what came next. "I need to talk to you about something," he said, his voice tense. My heart skipped a beat. "What is it?" He hesitated, his eyes darting around the room as if looking for an escape route. Then, with a deep breath, he blurted out the words that would change everything. "I want a divorce." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. I stared at him, unable to process what I had just heard. A divorce? Why? What's going on? He wouldn't look at me. "I've been thinking about it for a while. I'm not happy anymore. I think it's time we went our separate ways." I felt like the ground had been pulled out from under me. "Is there someone else?" I asked, my voice trembling. He didn't answer right away, but the silence was enough. I knew the answer before he even said it. "I'm going back to Nadezhda's apartment," he finally admitted. The room spun, and I had to steady myself against the arm of the couch. All the doubts, all the suspicions, they all came crashing down on me at once. I felt like a fool for not seeing it sooner, for ignoring all the signs that were right in front of me. "How long?" I whispered, barely able to get the words out. "How long has this been going on?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "It started after I began fixing things at her place. I didn't mean for it to happen, but it did," I finished for him, my voice hollow. I didn't know what hurt more, the betrayal itself or the fact that he had lied to me for so long. How had I been so blind? How had I let this happen? But there was something else, something that didn't quite add up. Nadezhda had complained about the apartment from the very beginning, but could it be that she had been orchestrating the whole thing? Breaking things on purpose just to get him over there, to seduce him? The thought made my blood boil. I looked at him, trying to find a glimmer of the man I had married, the man I had loved for so many years. But all I saw was someone who had been unfaithful, who had broken our vows and shattered our family. "Do you love her?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper. He didn't answer, but the look on his face told me everything I needed to know. "Get out," I said, my voice cold. "Pack your things and get out." He tried to say something, to explain or justify, but I didn't want to hear it. I was done listening to his lies. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart breaking with each step. I heard him moving around the apartment, gathering his things. I waited until I heard the door close behind him before I allowed myself to break down. The days that followed were a blur. I couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't think. My ex-husband, was gone, and I was left alone to pick up the pieces of my shattered life. I tried to keep busy, to distract myself from the pain. I focused on work, on cleaning the apartment, on anything that would keep my mind from drifting back to him and to the woman who had stolen him from me. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't escape the thoughts that plagued me. I found myself obsessing over Nadezhda, over what she had done to my marriage. How long had she been plotting this? Was it all part of some grand plan to steal my husband, to ruin my life? The more I thought about it, the more I began to see her as some sort of villain, a femme fatale who had manipulated her way into my husband's heart. But I couldn't let her win. I had to find a way to take control of my life again, to show her that she hadn't broken me. That's when the idea came to me. I decided that I would confront Nadezhda, but not in the way she might expect. I wouldn't go to her apartment and demand answers or scream at her. No, I would go there under the guise of kindness, of understanding. I would be the bigger person, the one who rose above the betrayal. But I had a plan, one that would hopefully expose her true nature and give me the closure I so desperately needed. I called Nadezhda and asked to meet her at the apartment. She agreed, sounding surprised but not suspicious. When I arrived, I was greeted by the sight of the woman who had ruined my marriage. She looked as put together as ever, her appearance almost too perfect, as though she had been waiting for this moment. "Come in," she said with a smile, though it didn't reach her eyes. "What brings you here?" I forced a smile of my own. "I wanted to talk to you, woman to woman. I'm not here to fight or make accusations. I just want to understand." Her expression faltered for a moment, but she quickly recovered. Of course, I'm happy to talk. She led me to the living room and we sat down. I could see the traces of my husband's presence, his clothes hanging neatly in the closet, his favorite mug on the kitchen counter. It hurt to see, but I pushed the pain aside and focused on the task at hand. I'm not going to lie, I began, my tone measured. This whole situation has been incredibly difficult for me. I loved my husband, and I never saw this coming. But I'm not here to point fingers. I just want to know how it all started. Nadezhda hesitated, as if weighing her options. It wasn't planned, she said finally. I didn't mean to get involved with him. It just happened. I nodded, pretending to be understanding. I can see how it might have happened, but there's something I don't understand. Why did you start breaking things in the apartment? Was it just to get him to come over more often? She blinked, caught off guard by the question. I didn't. Come on, Nadezhda, I interrupted gently. You can be honest with me. I'm not going to get angry, I just want to know the truth. She bit her lip, clearly struggling with how much to reveal. Okay, yes, she admitted. I did start creating problems with the apartment to get him to come over, but I didn't mean for it to go this far. I thought maybe we'd have a fling, but then, well, things got serious. I nodded again, feeling a surge of satisfaction. I had caught her in her lie, and now I had the confirmation I needed. Thank you for being honest with me, I said, my voice steady. But there's one more thing I need to ask. Do you really think he'll stay with you? After all, he left me, his wife of 8 years, for you. What's to stop him from doing the same thing to you when someone else comes along? Her face paled slightly, and I could see the doubt creeping in. He says he loves me, she replied, but there was no conviction in her voice. Maybe he does, I said, standing up. But remember this, if he could betray me, he could betray you too. Good luck, Nadezhda. You're going to need it. I turned and walked out of the apartment, my heart pounding in my chest. I had done it. I had confronted the woman who had stolen my husband, and I had left her with something to think about. Whether or not she would take my words to heart, I didn't know, but I felt a sense of closure that I hadn't expected. In the weeks that followed, I focused on rebuilding my life. I surrounded myself with friends and family who supported me, who reminded me that I was strong and capable of moving forward. I threw myself into work, into hobbies, into anything that would keep my mind off the past. It wasn't easy, but little by little, I began to heal. I started to see the divorce not as a failure, but as an opportunity to rediscover who I was, independent of my marriage. I had been so focused on being a wife that I had lost sight of my own dreams, my own identity. Now I had a chance to reclaim it. As for my ex-husband and Nadezhda, I heard through the grapevine that their relationship was already on the rocks. The excitement of the affair had worn off, and reality had set in. I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction. Maybe my words had planted seeds of doubt, or maybe they were just doomed from the start. But in the end, it didn't matter. What mattered was that I had taken control of my own life again. I had faced the pain, the betrayal, and come out stronger on the other side. I didn't need a man who would betray me, who would leave me for someone else. I didn't need Nadezhda's approval or her pity. All I needed was to remember my own worth, to know that I deserved better. And that's exactly what I found, myself, my strength, my future. With time, I knew that I would find love again, real love, the kind that wouldn't be shaken by temptation or deceit. But for now, I was content to focus on me, on building a life that was full, rich, and entirely my own. Because in the end, the best revenge is not bitterness or anger, but living well and finding happiness on your own terms.